The call came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, while I was sitting alone in a hotel room 3 states away from home. I had just finished a 12-hour business meeting and was loosening my tie when my wife, Emily, called. Her voice sounded strangely excited and nervous at the same time. "Daniel, I'm pregnant." For a few seconds, I simply stared at the wall. Then I forced myself to smile, even though she couldn't see me. "Congratulations," I said quietly. There was a long silence on the other end. "That's all you're going to say?" she asked. "What do you want me to say?" I replied, "I'm going to be a father." She laughed nervously. "You sound shocked." "I am," I admitted, but there was one thing Emily didn't know. 2 years earlier, after our second child was born, I had undergone a vasectomy. She had been there when the doctor explained everything. She had driven me home afterward. She had even joked that our baby-making days were officially over. So when she told me she was pregnant, I knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. I didn't confront her over the phone. I wanted to hear the truth from her face, not through a speaker. "I'll be home tomorrow," I told her. "Actually," she said quickly, "don't wait. I'm going to the hospital tonight. I've been having some pain." My stomach tightened. "What hospital?" She gave me the name. I booked the earliest flight I could find. Throughout the night, I kept replaying the same sentence in my head. "I'm pregnant." I opened my old medical records on my laptop and found a confirmation from my vasectomy. The procedure had been successful. Follow-up tests had confirmed it. There was virtually no chance of a natural pregnancy. Virtually. But I wasn't going to accuse my wife based on a statistic. There had to be an explanation. By sunrise, I was on a plane. I barely slept during the flight. Every possibility seemed worse than the one before it. Maybe the hospital had made a mistake. Maybe Emily had misunderstood the test. Maybe the pregnancy wasn't hers. But deep down, I already knew the truth I was desperately trying not to accept. When I finally reached the hospital, I saw Emily sitting on the edge of a bed, wrapped in a thin white blanket. Her eyes immediately filled with tears when she saw me. "Daniel," she whispered. I walked toward her slowly. She stood up and hugged me tightly. For several seconds, I said nothing. I could feel her trembling against my chest. Then I pulled back, looked directly into her eyes, and kissed her forehead. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm scared," she whispered. "But I'm happy, too." I smiled. "Then we should talk." Her expression changed instantly. "About what?" I sat beside her and held her hand. "About the baby." She looked down at our intertwined fingers. "What about the baby?" I took a breath. "When did you find out?" "Yesterday." "And when was the last time you took a pregnancy test?" She hesitated. "A few weeks ago." Something about the hesitation bothered me. "Emily, how far along did the doctor say you are?" She swallowed. "About 8 weeks." I stared at her. 8 weeks. I counted backward in my head. 8 weeks ago, I had been home. I remembered every detail of that period because Emily had been unusually distant. She had started staying late at work. She had suddenly become protective of her phone. She had changed her password. At the time, I had convinced myself she was simply stressed. Then I remembered something else. 8 weeks earlier, Emily had told me she was attending an important work dinner, but she had never told me who she was having dinner with. I slowly released her hand. "Emily," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I need you to answer one question honestly." She looked at me. "What happened 8 weeks ago?" Her face went completely pale, and before she could answer, the hospital room door opened. A man in a dark business suit stepped inside. Emily immediately whispered his name. "Mark." I knew that name. He was her boss. Mark stood in the doorway as if he had every right to be there. He looked at Emily, then at me, and for one long second, nobody spoke. I noticed the fear in his eyes before he tried to hide it. "Daniel," he said carefully, "I didn't know you were here." I almost laughed. Apparently, neither did I. Emily immediately stepped between us. "Please, both of you, just calm down." I looked at her. "Calm down? You just told me you were pregnant, and now your boss is standing in your hospital room." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "This isn't what you think." I stared at him. Then tell me what I should think. He opened his mouth, but Emily stopped him. Mark, please leave. He hesitated before finally walking away. The moment the door closed, I turned toward Emily. You have 5 minutes to tell me the truth. She began crying. Daniel, I never wanted this to happen. That sentence tells me everything. She covered her face with both hands. It started months ago. My chest tightened. The affair? She nodded. I sat down because my legs suddenly felt weak. She told me she had become close to Mark after he began giving her extra responsibilities at work. At first, she insisted they only talked. Then came late-night messages, private dinners, and eventually a hotel room after a company event. She swore it happened only once. But I knew enough about lies to understand that once was usually the version people told when they were trying to make something unbearable sound smaller. What about the baby? I asked. Emily looked at the floor. It's Mark's. The words landed harder than I expected. I closed my eyes. I had spent the entire flight home wondering whether my medical procedure had somehow failed. But it hadn't. My vasectomy had worked exactly as intended. The pregnancy was proof of something else entirely. Does he know? I asked. Emily nodded. I told him 2 weeks ago. And what did he say? Her silence answered before her words did. He said he would take care of me. I looked at her. And you believe him? She started crying harder. I was confused. No, I said quietly. You were making choices. Then Mark returned. This time, he entered with a doctor behind him. The doctor looked at Emily, then at me. Mr. Carter, there's something you should know. I stood. Go ahead. The doctor explained that Emily had experienced complications and needed additional monitoring. Then he mentioned that Mark had provided emergency contact information and had been involved in several discussions about her pregnancy. I looked at Mark. Emergency contact? Mark nodded. She asked me to help. Your wife is carrying my child, he said. I had a responsibility. I smiled bitterly. Your child. At least we agree on something. Emily suddenly grabbed my arm. Daniel, please don't leave me. I gently pulled away. You should have thought about that before you invited someone else into our marriage. She collapsed onto bed, sobbing. I walked toward the door, but before I left, I turned around. There's one thing I still don't understand. Emily looked up. What? Why did you call me and tell me you were pregnant before telling me the baby wasn't mine? She stared at me for several seconds. Then she whispered, because Mark changed his mind. I froze. What do you mean? Emily wiped her tears. He told me yesterday that he didn't want the baby. He said his marriage was more important than this. He told me I should figure everything out myself. I looked toward the hallway where Mark had disappeared. Suddenly, everything made sense. Emily hadn't called me because she wanted to share good news. She had called because the man she had chosen had abandoned her, and she needed someone else to catch her when she fell. I walked out of the hospital without saying another word. 3 days later, Emily called me again. I ignored the first 6 calls. On the 7th, I answered. What? She was crying. Daniel, please come home. I need you. Why? Because I made a terrible mistake. I looked out the window of my apartment at the city lights. No, Emily, you made several decisions. She was silent. Then she said something that changed everything. Daniel, there's another reason I was afraid to tell you the truth. My heart sank. What reason? I found something in Mark's office. I sat up. What did you find? A folder with your name on it. I said nothing. She continued, and Daniel, it wasn't about the affair. The next morning, Emily sent me a photograph. It showed a confidential document containing my full name, my company information, my financial records, and details about a business deal I had been negotiating for months. At the bottom was Mark's signature. Suddenly, I understood. This had never been just about my wife. Mark had been getting close to Emily because he wanted access to me. And somehow, my marriage had become part of a much bigger plan. I immediately contacted my attorney and froze every major account connected to the business deal. Then I reviewed the security records for my company. That was when I found the final piece. Mark had accessed my private files exactly 8 weeks earlier, the same week Emily claimed their affair had begun. I called Emily one last time. "Tell me everything." She hesitated. Then she whispered, "Daniel, Mark knew about your business deal before you ever told him, and he knew you were going to be out of town." My blood ran cold. He planned the whole thing. I stared at the phone. What exactly did he plan? Emily began crying. He wanted you distracted. He wanted you angry. He wanted you to walk away from the company. There was a long silence. Then she said the words I would never forget. "Daniel, I think Mark was trying to destroy your life, so he could take everything you built." And for the first time since that hospital room, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about evidence. Because I finally understood something. The greatest mistake I could make now would be to confront him emotionally. So I decided to do the one thing neither of them expected. I stayed completely silent. And 3 weeks later, Mark walked into a meeting believing he had already won. He had no idea I had been recording everything.